700 milligrams. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report is coming from AnnaElizabeth off the Psychonaut Wiki. When this happened, 2008. The drug used was diphenhydramine hydrochloride. The dose was 600 to 700 milligrams. As she did note, can't remember if I took 12 or 14 of them. The route of administration was Unisum sleep gels. Gender, female. Weight, 46 kilograms or 101 pounds. Age, 21 or 22. As they note, I can't remember the time of the year. Prior experience, psychedelics and opiates. Setting, in her house, presumably her room most of the time. So this report is actually an accidental diphenhydramine trip. She was actually looking to get some sleep and took a little too many and ended up tripping a few hours later, and it was pretty strong to say the least. So I'll let the report speak for itself. I know you guys are going to like this one, and without further ado, let's dive right into it. Disclaimer: I do not recommend taking this much of any over-the-counter. I did it stupidly attempting to sleep one night, sick as hell with the flu. This was not an intentional trip or planned out by any means, and I had no idea what was about to happen. Generally, I love psychedelics, but remember kids, this is a delirium, which means you're basically having the worst nightmare of your life while awake. If you're going to do it, have a sitter present and be prepared for what's to come. Happy hallucinating. I couldn't sleep to save the life of me. I was in withdrawal from opiates, generally pain pills, which is an entire other story altogether, and sick with the flu/chest cold. I decided that taking a few sleeping pills would help me get a few hours of sleep. After about an hour, it wasn't working, so I took more and ended up taking the entire packet of 12. I could have sworn I took 2 more, but I don't know. About a half hour later, I went to stand up to use the bathroom, and everything had a strange feel to it. The room was suddenly darker and felt like something bad was about to happen. People didn't look right, things were alien in shape, ordinary things looked wrong and menacingly shaped. There was a constant black, jellious ball that would be nearby. My legs and arms felt 1,000 pounds, and I had the worst metallic taste in my mouth. I remember saying, "Guys, this isn't right," and my friend thinking nothing of it. I walked into the bathroom where I proceeded to attempt to throw them all up because I realized something wasn't right. Yeah, that wasn't working so well. The pills came up, but only what was left of them. They were basically already jellified into my body, and there was nothing I can do but ride it out. I realized this somehow in all my horrific shit, but knowing I was hallucinating, it was simply a reaction. Still wasn't calming me down any, because I thought I was going to die after that. I'll tell you what I remember. I sit down on the floor, attempting to relax, but I look up and the digital clock is just counting up minute by minute, and it gets faster and faster until it starts going backward and ended up on 666. I swear to God, I thought of that movie 1408 because it had just come out not long before that. This must have been where I fucked up. I remember saying, "No, no, no," and was terrified of what was to come. I took that as where my trip really went downhill. It was almost like my brain was warning me with the clock. There was a woman I could see out of the corner of my eye. She was haggard, bloody, and wearing all white. For whatever reason, she kept asking me something, and I couldn't make it out. I would get up to walk over to her, and when I'd get closer, she'd just evaporate away and reappear somewhere else. I was seeing children sitting in closets, swinging around, holding hands, and then they would look at me and laugh. I kept thinking my friends were over there when they weren't. I'd see Dan over in the corner, doing routine shit like playing his guitar, or singing a song, or just sitting there, in the dark. I'd be like, "What are you doing, Dan?" And every time I'd walk over to him, I would touch the back of his head and he would disappear. I moved on to a completely different existence after that. I can't even remember most of it because I literally went to another place. I thought I had died and this was hell. Just a constant feeling of 1,000 people really close to my face with shadows behind me. I called my mom, but what I said to her was nothing what I imagined or remembered. The convo went something like this. Me. Mom, I took too many sleeping pills and I'm seeing shit. Mom. Oh, that's your own fault. Drink some water, take a deep breath, try to get some sleep. There's no point in going to the ER because they'll just pump your stomach and you don't want that. I seriously believed this is what she said up until a few weeks ago when we started talking about it, and she tells me, Anna, that's not what you said. And I was like, you're kidding me. What did I actually say? She said I told her that my ex was perpendicularly horizontal to the wall and the bed, and he's levitating. And apparently went off about levitating people and how there isn't anything to him. It's like he's clear and I can see through him. And apparently everyone is dissolving into shit. Which, that one I can kind of understand, because it was almost like everyone and everything was 2D, and there was no mass to them or anything. Like if someone were to sit down on the couch, they would have become a part of the couch. Almost like a picture printed on a t-shirt, if you can picture that. Haha. That conversation went down nothing like what I remember. After that, I managed to make it down to the bedroom, where I laid down, only to hear the sound of music playing far away. It was like a radio was on, and I couldn't find where it was coming from. That's when the spiders started. Quite frankly, I'm surprised it took this long, because from what I've read from other reactions to this shit, they happen almost immediately. Well, these little bastards were forming out of the fuzz on the bed. Anything. Cat hair, fuzz, strings, etc. They would turn into this medium-sized black and brown spider with these clear, almost finishing line legs. I'd go to touch one because I had a terrible case of the touch everything and it disappears, so every time I did, it would reappear somewhere else and bring 10 more with them. They never really bothered me much, except they would crawl on me, but after an hour of insisting to my ex that there were spiders in the bed and I'm not imagining it, I started to just get tired of fighting them off and tried to ignore them. The kaleidoscope of shit that was going on when I closed my eyes was insane. That was probably the only nice part about this entire hallucination. The only time I didn't like having my eyes closed was when a face would bum rush me out of the visuals and scare my eyes open. While lying there trying to fall asleep, I saw Barbie dolls sitting on the tops of each door frame, and they were lined up and they would all turn and look at me and kick their feet, which for some reason was hilarious to me and didn't frighten me at all. In fact, it was probably the nicest thing they could have done. After that, I just kept seeing shadow people and people outside my window looking in, people in the closet, and more friends that weren't really there. At this point, I was able to finally fall asleep, and when I woke up the next morning, I must have only gotten 4 hours, but the hallucinations weren't nearly as bad anymore. The spiders were still there for a few minutes, but they would just crawl back into the blankets, and they were eventually gone for good. The last hallucination was my friend, Chris, peeking his one eye through the crack of the bedroom door, and when he saw me, he smiled and asked if I wanted to visit again soon, and I got up to open the door to push him out, and he disappeared. After that, things were back to normal. I managed not to suffer any serious repercussions from that one, and I'm glad to say I haven't had any withdrawals since that time, because I'm now 6 years clean from the dangerous crap. Smiley face. As always, please be safe about your journeys to the other world. Sometimes they can be scary. I don't know how it would feel to go into a DPH trip knowing the outcome. I'm sure you can make it nicer and a little easier to handle with the proper setting and mind. Peace and love, and remember, knowledge is power when it comes to anything. That includes drugs. Heart. Well, here we are back with another DPH trip report. This one kind of being a classic one if I do say myself. Before we get into the trip though, let's break down diphenhydramine and explain how exactly you can trip from it. So I'm guessing most of you here have heard of Benadryl. If you haven't, it is a pretty common over-the-counter medicine that is used for allergies and sleep. I'll note, based on my own experience, it does a really good job at helping you with those things, but there is a potential to get pretty messed up on it. Now, that doesn't mean go grab a box of Benadryl right away because you want to get high. I'ma just say nah to that. That is far from what most of us are going to want to do. The effects of the drug are pretty undesirable. First, by taking a dose high enough for a trip, it can pretty much have you feeling like shit. You'll get tired, drowsy, your body might have involuntary shakes, your heart rate can increase, you become dehydrated easier, you'll feel heavy as fuck. Basically, it isn't the most comfortable of states you want to put yourself in. But what really turns people away, or pulls them in, is the delirium you can experience. Like from Anna's trip here, we can see a variety of realistic and dark hallucinations pop up. Unlike other drugs, the hallucinations experienced on DPH and other deliriants are often indistinguishable from reality. So if you want to feel like there are spiders actually crawling around or talk to your friends who really aren't there, DPH can provide this. Looking at Anna's report, it seems she got wind of the full package. Like most trips, it brought on a bad vibe almost right away, and all of the scenarios and hallucinations that followed seemed to match up with that. Often, it is also difficult to recall the experience and its exactness. It is insightful to see her mother's comments afterwards, as we can see the state she was in with more exact details. Though I will say it is unfortunate that this trip did result in an overdose of Benadryl, and I would say that's pretty irresponsible to take that many without doing any research. I could possibly see, someone taking 6 to 8 pills, but 12 to 14, that's something else. Also, there should have been a degree of patience on her end, so the pills could kick in and take effect. But regardless, what happened happened. And it isn't also the first time we're reporting someone accidentally tripping on Benadryl. Triggered an alien abduction by tinfoil hats, our 10th Benadryl report accounts for his mistake of using too much Benadryl on his back where he had a recent bad sunburn as a kid. Needless to say, by the title of the trip, it made him believe he was being abducted and experimented on by aliens, not actually too far in intensity compared with Anna's hellish state she couldn't come to describe at one point in her trip. But there are a lot of Benadryl trips to cover at this point, and we aren't going to stay here listing them out one by one, so I'll bring up the last DPH trip reports and any ones that stand out in relatability. But the most recent one is actually 800 milligrams by Ben, which was sent in. This stands as a pretty good comparison considering the dosage isn't that far off. But what is absent most from Ben's trip is he didn't have much fear or a heavy dark tone surrounding his trip, which it's commonly said that the higher of a dose you take, the more likely you're going to consider weird hallucinations as normal and for your fear to be absent almost completely. But the hallucinations reported are very similar, seeing people who aren't there, imagining being somewhere else, seeing some dark shadow people doing some weird activities. Most of it's on par, though I would say Anna here had the stronger trip. Though the dose may be lower, I would think a big portion of the trip does depend on your own brain chemistry and yourself as a person for what you experience and how you take all that in. But I'm going to leave that here, so I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you guys have any requests or want to send in your own reports, you know where to send it in. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, follow the socials. It's been someone that's no one, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.